Oh god, this gives me vertigo. I had a feeling in my stomach. I'm glad they included it because it's such an important temple on the Acropolis. More important than the Parthenon, in fact. Not many wall paintings survive from ancient Greece itself. Some of the best ones actually come from southern Italy today, like from Paestum and the tombs, because they don't survive. But yeah, there would have been wall paintings in places like the Agora. So historically, there's not always a dead body when you walked into the Parthenon. Hello, I'm Tristan Hughes. I'm the host of the Ancients podcast, which you can listen to on your favourite podcast player, and you can also now watch on YouTube. But today, we're not doing that. We're doing a tour of the Acropolis, Athens' great Acropolis, in its golden age in the 5th century BC, and also the Agora, the commercial and political hub of Athens, right around the corner, just near the Acropolis in Athens. Do make sure to like and subscribe to the Echoes of History YouTube channel. This is just one of many that the team have created about various cities and sites from the Assassin's Creed franchise. I'm really looking forward to this. Let's go. Okay, so we're with our male protagonist at the moment. And we are very blue, which is the kind of classic portrayal of Athens today. This idea that Sparta's red and Athens is blue. There's no basis in reality for that in ancient times. I think that's more of a modern construction. But once again, it's that contrast with Sparta is red. And then Athens, you see blue coloured and with the owl symbol to symbolise Athena, the protective deity of the city. Shout out also to Joseph, who's our Ancients producer, who created this footage. So it just shows, work hard, play Assassin's Creed hard is our motto at the Ancients, or maybe just for Joseph anyway, but well done, Joseph. So we're walking up at the moment towards the Acropolis. It's very grand. Statues are painted, that's very cool to see. The columns are painted as well, so very vibrant looking. And this is the golden age of Athens. This is about half a century after the Persian Wars, a bit more than that, where Athens has formed an empire. Transformed what was originally a league to fight the Persians into its empire. It's gathered a lot of gold, a lot of wealth because of it. And midway through the 5th century BC, one of the leading figures of Athens, a man called Pericles, decided to undertake this great building project on the Acropolis and in the Agora around, full of monuments and beautiful buildings, to really emphasize the wealth and prominence of Athens as the leader, as the most powerful city and the leader of an empire at the time. The Acropolis has been used by people since prehistoric times. I think, yes, before, I think in the Stone Age you had people on top of the Acropolis. But one of my favourite bits of history about the Acropolis before now, the 5th century BC, is back in the Bronze Age, in Mycenaean times. I love the Bronze Age and the story of the Mycenaeans and so on. So they had a palace on top of the Acropolis. So one of the great palaces of the Mycenaeans was here. And you can still see little bits of the walls, the Mycenaean walls that surrounded the Acropolis today. They're called Cyclopean walls. They're dry stone, but with big blocks of masonry, so much so that this idea that only the Cyclopses could have created them. But then you get to the 5th century here, which is the real prime time for the Acropolis and all the monuments that you still go and see today. And we are entering into the sole entrance of the Acropolis now, a very grand entrance, which was the Propylaea. Now, you still walk through the Propylaea today to get through the Acropolis. It's the natural entrance to this big rock. And we have a source from ancient history. There's basically an ancient Greek travel writer called Pausanias, and he describes kind of visiting the Acropolis, and he mentions seeing the Propylaea and how grand it was. You can see it there now. It looks like the facade of a magnificent temple. Its roof was made of marble as well. There were lots of statues here, there, and everywhere. You can also see to the right, we've just passed a temple under construction. That's the Temple of Athena Nike, which you can also see today. And that's quite fitting that it's still under construction now, because it was being built at the time this game is set. But here you go, here's the great entranceway of the Propylaea with its great columns, paintings as well, and beautiful kind of ornate decorations, very much in line with what the Athenians would have wanted for the entrance to the Acropolis in the mid-5th century. See paintings in that side room there. Presumably it's symmetrical on the other side. Rooms could effectively be, I guess, kind of rented out as well. I mean, there would have been public events, or people could have congregated in those kind of areas around the Propylaea. It's also kind of, when you think of it practically, this is the only entrance in and out of the Acropolis. So you have to imagine the Propylaea being filled with people sometimes when there were big ceremonies and rituals happening at Athens, which ended at the Acropolis, one in particular called the Panathenaea. So this gateway would have been filled with people sometimes being funneled in and out of this important area, right at the heart of Athenian identity. And now we walk into the Acropolis itself. That statue is of the goddess Artemis, goddess of the hunt. You see a deer there as well. And this is one of the important religious buildings on the Acropolis. This was a sanctuary to Artemis. I think it's Brauronia? I'm really bad with the pronunciation. Brauron is a place in Attica, which is the region of Athens, where there was a sanctuary of Artemis. Who's goddess of the hunt, but also the moon later, but also very much associated with the passing of women into adulthood and to childbirth. So she's very popular with women, and especially women who are about to get married. Having said that, 5th century BC Athens is not a good time to be a woman. You don't have many civic rights at all. You're largely confined to your household. You couldn't perform in any theatrical performances. The only times you were really allowed out would be for rituals and religious events and so on. So that's why I say that that particular sanctuary would have been important. That's another statue of Athena there. I think that's Athena Polias with a spear and shield. Many different types of Athena you'll see on this Acropolis. I mentioned Athena Nike already. That's Athena Victory, Athena Polias, Athena of the City, and there are a couple more that we'll visit in time as well. So the Acropolis is also steeped in mythology. The Athenians believe that this was also where a big divine contest was held between Athena and Poseidon for which deity would be the protector of the city. Athena wins it, Poseidon loses. But there's also another story associated with what I believe that statue is showing here. It's showing a big bronze bull. Theseus, there is a massive bull which had previously been captured by Heracles, which is ravaging around Attica near Marathon, of all places. And Theseus subdues the bull, and he brings it, the hero Theseus, he brings it up to the Acropolis where he sacrifices it. And apparently, according to Pausanias, the people of Marathon dedicated something on the Acropolis about this bull. So maybe it could have been a bronze statue of the bull, which that image was probably alluding to. Here we have the Parthenon itself, right outside the front of it, with its majestic Doric columns, like the pinnacle of a Greek temple, and beautiful art and architecture that I'm sure we'll explore a bit more as this walkthrough goes on. But it looks like we're walking around the edge of it at the moment. That's a very interesting statue there. 2 swords, a madman ready for battle with his big helmet as well, and 2 Xiphos swords. No historical accuracy for that, but hey, it looks cool. I'm walking down the side of the Acropolis at the moment. So, beneath this would just be kind of a pretty steep rock face. And then there were walls as well. So you had the Propylaea gateway, the entranceway, and the rest of the Acropolis was walled. Here's another statue you have of Athena Polias with her helmet, spear, and shield. Athena was goddess of many things, of wisdom, and the like, but she was also very much goddess associated with war. She was a war goddess. She was and strategic thinking in war in particular. So going back to that story of Athena versus Poseidon, the story goes that Athens had become, grown into a really interesting city, a prosperous city, a notable city, under a mythical king, half man, half snake, called Cecrops. And Poseidon and Athena vie for divine protectorship of it. Poseidon offers them a water. He strikes his staff against a rock, sounds quite familiar to a biblical account, and up spews water, like a spring. But then when they taste the water, they find it's seawater. Athena, she produces an olive tree. Olive, for food and agriculture, but also for wood as well. And the Athenians decide to choose Athena. But Poseidon remains important, of course. Athens becomes a prominent naval power at the same time. So although Poseidon lost, he's still a big deal in Athens. Just past a spring of water there. There wasn't a spring on the Acropolis, but maybe this is a reference to the spring of water which was by the Acropolis, which makes it a key place for settling all those years before. So maybe that was an allusion to that. Here you see stone cutters, showing very much like with the temple of Athena Nike we saw earlier being constructed. That work is still going on at this time on the Acropolis. The building program is not yet finished. There we go, the majestic facade of the Parthenon at this end as well. Classic Doric exterior, which we'll explore, no doubt. Climbing on top of the walls. So I would presume this is looking eastwards-ish in the game. You can see the walls that surrounded Athens, the Themistoclean walls, named after one of the great military leaders of Athens in the Persian Wars, Themistocles, the admiral. Funny enough, Themistocles actually ends up at the Persian court of all places, but that's another story. But yes, giving you a sense of the vantage point that you're at, and once again, looking back at the facade of the Parthenon. So the Parthenon was built out of funds from the Athenian Empire, which was originally a league of cities united against the Persians, the Delian League. Over time, it becomes the Athenian Empire. Lots of people debate when that happens. But one of the things, it was called the Delian League because Delos, the island of Delos, was where the money was originally kept. But then the Athenians, over time, decide, we're the biggest city. We're going to take all the money and we're going to keep it in Athens. And they kept it in the Parthenon. So there is a bit of a debate among scholars about whether the Parthenon is actually a temple or whether we should actually see it as a treasury. Debates either way. I mean, there's no kind of priesthood that we know associated with the Parthenon. But at the same time, Pausanias, who talks in detail about his visit to the Parthenon, he does call it a temple. So we're entering into the Parthenon now. Here we go, the nous, the heart of the temple. So historically, there's not always a dead body when you walked into the Parthenon. I'll just make that clear. I might need to ask Joseph about this, what he's been doing in the game before he decided to do a walkthrough of the Parthenon. But evidently just kill some poor Athenian soldier in this important temple that usually most people weren't allowed into. But yes, I can say with a bit of certainty that there wouldn't have been dead people inside. You have these decorations on the wall. That looks like it's harkening to the continuous frieze that was on the external side of the interior part, if you still follow me, of the Parthenon. And it would have been high up. But it shows like a procession. And it probably depicts the Panathenaea, or the Grand Panathenaea. This festival, the Panathenaea, happened once a year. It ended on the Acropolis, bringing animals up for sacrifice and offerings and so on, and there are horsemen, there are women, there are men, there are gods seated down in the original Panathenaic frieze as well. And once every 4 years, there was a grander version of it called the Grand Panathenaea. You can see it today at the British Museum, the whole frieze, but it wouldn't have been down here on the inside, but I think that's what this colour that's alluding to. So here we have the statue of Athena Parthenos, and it was built by the famous sculptor Phidias, who also built the statue of Zeus at Olympia. And you'll notice how it's kind of gold and white. It's gold and ivory, a particular combination known as chryselephantine. And the gold of Athena was for her drapery and the white was for her skin. Now she's holding in one hand victory. She's got a shield and a spear in the other, and there's also a snake at the bottom, and that symbolized another early mythical king of Athens who was half man, half snake, Erechthonius or Erechtheion. So you had this beautiful statue of Athena Parthenos in the center of the Parthenon, and that's Athena the Virgin. So Parthenon, basically means like the maiden, but at the same time, in Greek it's called Parthenon, so it's the plural in ancient Greek, so it could be of the maidens.
Μάλλον δρώμεθα το παραδείγμα με οδηγέ των κομμών. Ελθέ, μακαρνίστε συβρίων και χαρημένος εή.
But now we come out of the cella, or the naos, the centre of the Parthenon, and we're climbing one of its great majestic Doric columns that was on the exterior. Shields on the architrave, this rectangular strip, and there's evidence that some arms were put on there, arms and armour. Maybe not this time though. Then you can see the metopes and the triglyphs, these sculptures beneath, and the triglyph, 3 lines dividing them. Those metopes, I'm going to pause it here, the editor's going to pause it because I want to talk through this. Those metopes aren't historically accurate for the Parthenon, but what I do like about it is you can actually read what those scenes are, and this is why I've stopped it here. So you can see there's one which looks like a man carrying an animal, a very strong man carrying an animal over his head, and it looks a very ferocious animal, and there's a man in a pot kind of taking refuge. He's very scared seeing it. This is the last Labour of Hercules, which is when he brings back from the underworld the 3-headed dog Cerberus to King Eurystheus. I think he's saying, yeah, it's King Eurystheus. And he's supposedly so scared when he sees Cerberus that he jumps in a pot. And then Hercules, Heracles, Roman versus Greek, I know. He then takes the dog back to Hades afterwards. Then you've got Heracles, I can say both, holding up the world, and Atlas, the man who originally holds up the world, to his right, retrieving the apples from the garden of Hesperides. I think that's Athena helping Heracles hold up the world. Then you have Athena and Hercules has got this big kind of, looks like a big spoon, big ladle, but he's clearing the Augean stables, which was another task. We had to get all this, these very smelly stables that he had to clear, and he did it by diverting a couple of rivers. So you have the Labours of Hercules being depicted on the metapiece here. The Parthenon didn't actually depict the Labours of Hercules. They were actually shown on the Temple of Zeus at Olympia. So that's the metapiece part. I'm done. The next part is what you then have this beautiful sculpture in the triangular top bit of the Parthenon, which is known as the pediment. It shows here just various scenes. What I do like is that they've shown how, as the space deteriorated, it declined. You had different postures, like people lying down or kneeling and so on, to make the most of the space. This just seems like a classic scene they've chosen here. But on the actual Parthenon, the pediments showed 2 scenes. One was the contest between Poseidon and Athena for control of Athens that I'd mentioned earlier. And the other was the birth of Athena. And her birth is pretty bizarre. She basically is born from the head of Zeus. Zeus has a pounding headache, and out pops Athena idea. So that's also shown on the other end. And now we're walking along the roof of the Parthenon. Many fascinating ancient Greek temples, so I mean like temples of Hera at Paestum, or the Temple of Zeus at Cyrene, and so on, would have had terracotta roofs. But the Parthenon, the Athenians wanted to go a step further, so they made it out of marble. So this would have been a marble roof as well, and it's got these nice decorations on top. And looking out towards the sea, beautiful sea. Oh god, this gives me vertigo. I had a feeling in my stomach just watching that figure jump from the top there. I need to get used to that. Yep, push those guys out of the way. Get them out of the way. So it looks like we've now left the Acropolis. So that was fun. So here you get more of a sense of the hustle and bustle of Athens beneath the Acropolis. A bit of an insight into Athens as a city in the 5th century BC.
Διαμοίραζε βραχίτη με τα θύματα πολέμου. Απόλεσα τον οίκο την εστία. Η πειρατέα πεπειράτησαν ανθρωποθήσεις. Και εύχομαι ότι ούδη μόνον τα ημάτια εν το επιστήμιο.
So I've got market stalls here. So I'm presuming we might be nearing the Agora. I don't think we're in it yet. I think we'd recognise a few more of the buildings. But Athens, yes, it wasn't right next to the coast, but it was strongly linked to the sea with its harbour at Piraeus. They had the long walls of Athens that connected the city with its important harbour. And Piraeus was one of the biggest, if not the biggest harbour in the classical world. It was the biggest, and it was a centre of trade as well as having military wars as well. Athens is a sea power, but it is also one where ships from across the Greek world and beyond would come to sell their wares. And many of those wares would then make their way up to Athens itself. And, that was another key to Athens' great prosperity, was the trade links that it had. So you can imagine that, the items that were available to people in Athens would have been, from places far and wide, whether it could be, items all the way from southern Spain, Tartessos and the Phoenicians, and Carthage, or with the Etruscans. The Greeks and the Etruscans were, they're good. Well, I say good powers. They're not good powers all the time. There's a bit of fighting between them. But the Etruscans love Greek stuff, and I'm sure some Etruscan stuff went the other way. From North Africa as well, from Egypt and so on. So Athens, you can sometimes think of the Acropolis. We think of the grand religious buildings and so on, but it was a commercial hub as well, and famous for its politics, its democracy, and so on. So I guess this gives you more of a sense of the real Athens, everyday life beneath the Acropolis. So now I do think we're entering into the Agora, and I say that because that big temple building in the distance, I'm presuming that's the Temple of Hephaestus, which you can still see today in the Agora, and also probably by all the market stalls around. So yes, commercial hub, but much more than that. This was a place for social gatherings. It was the political centre as well. There was a building known as the Bouleuterion, an important building of Athenian democracy, the Bouleur, the council house. Philosophers as well liked to roam around the Agora and certain buildings and quiz people as they went past, as Socrates famously does. I think there are lots of memes around today. It's like just an average Athenian walking around the Agora, and then the Socrates just talking in their ear, all this different stuff. So the Agora was a hotspot for philosophers, for merchants. There were law courts as well, open law courts, so all of that stuff happening. I'm doing a bit of work at the moment about Athens after the death of Alexander the Great. And one of the statesmen of the time is sentenced to death and is forced to drink hemlock in the prison. So one of the things I was looking at recently was, where is the prison where also Socrates would have drunk hemlock and been forced to commit suicide? There's a bit of debate around it, but it may well have been somewhere near the Agora as well. So you have all of these different, state functioning buildings and public buildings all around the Agora, alongside marketplaces and stores and so on. You have more sculptural work going on. I think I would just say this harkens back to how this great building program in the second half of the 5th century BC Athens, it was on the Acropolis, but it was also in the Agora. So the Agora, another big public place where the Athenians wanted to show off their power and their prominence with some beautiful buildings and so on. Another story of people who wandered around the Agora is one that I remember interviewing Dr. Owen Rees about very early on in the story of, in the Tale of the Ancients, when the Ancients podcast began 5 years ago. Apparently there was a combat veteran called Epizelus who fought at the Battle of Marathon, and following in the years after, he would wander around the Agora and tell people how he lost his sight at the Battle of Marathon, how he just went blind at the battle. And Owen has argued how, this is a case of combat trauma. but he was a fascinating ancient Greek case of it. It's a nice scene, painted scene. Not many wall paintings survive from ancient Greece itself. Some of the best ones actually come from southern Italy today, like from Paestum and the tombs, because they don't survive. But yeah, there would have been wall paintings in places like the Agora that depicted a hunt. I normally associate hunt depictions with the Macedonians, to be fair, but they would have been there for the Athenians as well, of course. So it looks like we've jumped back to the Acropolis, of all places. We're now back on the sacred mountain, the big rock in Athens, glorified at this time. And I believe this one is the Erechtheion. So a bit of a historical inaccuracy. The Erechtheion wasn't completed at this time, but I'm glad they've included it because it's such an important temple on the Acropolis. More important than the Parthenon, in fact. Athena Polias, Athena the city, was worshipped in this temple. Here it shows her almost with gold and ivory, like the biggest statue you saw earlier. That's not accurate. The Athena Polias statue in the Erechtheion was actually made of olive wood and was incredibly sacred. The Panathenaic procession ended at the Erechtheion, and part of the procession was to put a new cloak, a new peplos robe, on the olive wood statue. So it's incredibly important, and the Athenians believed that olive wood statue, the first rendition of it, was dropped from Athena, from the skies above. And the Erechtheion also supposedly had the olive tree that Athena planted in the city. And you can, I think you might see it. Is that it there? I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's in the game. And a rock and salt water, supposedly, harking back to Poseidon. Here you have the Great Altar, which we know was right next to the temple, the Erechtheion, and that would be where sacrifices happened. I think you can see a goat there or a sheep that's been sacrificed. And that's harkening back to this idea that many of the offerings they happened outside of the temple itself. Also, ancient Greece, the deity is celestial, they're in the world above, so you want to be in a high place like the Acropolis, where you make your sacrifice, and the waft of meat and so on goes up to the gods above, so it has less distance to cover to get up there. So nice to see that there was a sacrifice offering happening at the great altar right there. The Erechtheion, interesting temple design, very different to the Parthenon. If you type in Erechtheion today, you can see how it's kind of almost like kind of different squares attached together. And you have here, right now, perhaps the most famous parts, which are the Caryatids, these women statues which are supporting this part of the Erechtheion, which was the tomb of the mythical king Kepkrops, I mentioned earlier, this half man, half snake. There's a story that it's linked to women who betrayed the Greeks in the Persian Wars, but there's architecture elsewhere, and we know from statues that women's statues were popular back in archaic times, and similar kind of chori, as they're known, chori statues were used in the building of other temples like the treasury, the Siphnian treasury at Delphi, which is older than the Erechtheion. So I think it's more an architectural, there's an architectural history there rather than that kind of story of the women who betrayed the Greeks. And now walking back towards the Propylaea, the entranceway, and you can't really miss it, the great statue of Athena Promachos, which was right at the front of the Acropolis. Now, Pausanias says you could see the tip of this Athena's spear from Cape Sunion, which is right at the bottom of Attica, entering into the Saronic Gulf and the Aegean Sea. So it's a massive statue made of bronze. And Athena Promachos is very much like this, like Athena who would be with you in the first ranks of battle and war. This idea, she's right at the front in warfare. And it's shown here, this our protagonist is trying to get up tried the shield, couldn't get up the shield, but climbing up the drapery very impressively, I must admit, for a big bronze statue of Athena. But yes, it was staggering. You've got this aegis with the face of Medusa on the front, which is another kind of classic symbol of Athena. She's got a great helmet as well, and she's looking over the city. But this was an absolutely incredible monument that, unsurprisingly, doesn't survive today. I think you know if that statue is still standing on the Acropolis, but it's not. Here you can see a visual of the whole of Athens. We saw there briefly my favourite part of Athens, which is actually its port, Piraeus, down at the bottom, and the Munichia, which became the fortress in the future for garrisons following Alexander the Great's death, Macedonian garrisons. But you can't take away from the magnificence of the Acropolis, where we are now. Oh no, he jumps again. I can't do that. It's like a feeling in the back of my soul. It feels like I'm falling as well. It's horrible. That was a walkthrough of the Acropolis in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I hope you enjoyed it. I probably may have given a bit too much information at times, but it was fun to see how they've depicted Athens in the game. If you've enjoyed the video, well, we have many more of similar ilk on the Echoes of History YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe and have a look, and I'll hopefully see you in more of these videos in the future.